Welcome, everyone, to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. We are live from Wichita, Kansas. We're so excited to be here today. But let me tell you, we're doing things differently and kind of on a wing. I'm working with a computer I don't know, and we don't have Mandy. So Liz and I are going to get us through this. But welcome, everyone. We are so excited to be here in Wichita. We're excited for Convergence to start. I've already seen some of you in the elevator, and it's going to be a wonderful week. And what better way to start off this week than with Textiles and Tea? We want to start by thanking our sponsor, Kathy Weber. We appreciate you sponsoring this episode of Textiles and Tea. It's so nice when somebody just steps up and says, I want this to happen, and then they donate money. So thank you, Kathy. We appreciate it. We hope you enjoy it today. The other exciting thing is that we have Yoshiko Wada today. And if you're not familiar with her, you're going to be excited. Yoshiko is an artist, scholar, and curator of traditional and temporary textile art. She's the president of the World Shibori Network Foundation and has a PhD candidate in the School of Museum Studies at the University of Leicester, researching the Boro phenomenon. And we're going to talk more about Boro too. Yoshiko authorized or co-authorized publications on Shibori, kimono, Borro, contemporary textile art, and produced the Natural Dye Workshop DVD series with Michel Garcia. If you haven't seen those DVDs, you should check them out. They are great. Her art training began at age 7, and she continued with a BFA in Kyoto and an MFA in the United States, as well as art making and exhibits. She an exponent of substantial practices in traditional textile craft, such as natural dyeing, organic cotton, and all textile and craft making for half of a century. Yoshiko has empowered designers, artists, artisans, and regional communities worldwide, including Japan, China, and India. Hello, welcome.
Hello. Hello, Kathy.
It's
Thank
so
you
nice
for
to have
having
you
me.
here.
Uh-huh. Very good.
Well, we're going to start with the big question first. What is your favorite tea?
Oh, that's very interesting. I would say good oolong from Taiwan is my favorite, very
Really?
aromatic. And then I was introduced to that in 1985 by tea purveyors in Taipei. And so all accoutrements and how you listen to the aroma of tea with a little cup. It's actually called listening to the aroma in Chinese, this
Oh,
cup.
really?
Yes. So actually it's more like not drinking so much, but this aroma almost intoxicates you. It's in, but of
We
course
should do a program on something like that.
I like all sorts of teas. So
Um, Tell us how you got started in fiber because your education didn't start in the fiber field, did it?
no, I have studied drawing and painting because of my grandmother thinking my grandchild is talented. So she started sending me to artist studio since I was 7 years old. And I thought, like, people ask me, what would you like to be when you grow up? I didn't know. I said, I want to be an artist, whatever that was. And but when I had to take an exam to enter a fine arts university in Kyoto, which was very desirable school to study art, but I was a bit tired of painting, so I wanted to study something else, and I ended up in majoring textiles, weaving and dyeing, probably from the other grandmother whose family was a kimono maker. So that's how I came to textiles.
Well, we're going to talk more about that as we go through the program today, um, because I was curious if that has a way of um, impacting on what you do now because you've explored a lot of modalities, and even after college you've explored different art processes and everything. So how did you settle on Shibori? Because there were a variety of things that you did, right?
Actually, just one thing to add to what I said about my upbringing. There
Uh-huh.
was an exhibition called the Kimono Inspiration, Art and Art to Wear in America. It was organized at the Textile Museum in Washington, D.C. It was fabulous exhibition of wearable art, but it was focused on sort of the Japanismo and kimono type of thing. And so I have co-edited, co-curated, co-wrote, and I have reflection of my upbringing written in that, which might be interesting. And I wasn't really, I didn't have anything to do with Shibari per se until much later. And actually, I was interested during my art school years in Kyoto. I was interested in katazome, which is a rice-based resist stencil dyeing, and kasuri. And later, kasuri, I was really interested. And I had to, after I finished my school, university, got a BFA, I had to go and apprentice and study. Kasuri is a Japanese word for ikat weaving. And because it was considered more artisan, dominant kind of process that wasn't taught in a university, but I really liked it. And I ended up writing the first English kind of instruction for Japanese ikat introduction. And some people started doing, this was like 1973, long time ago. And so I was very new at that time. And I actually was invited a couple of times at Convergence to teach ikat workshops, ikat weaving workshops. So in that sense, my interest in the resist dyeing probably is this indirectness of expression. You don't directly paint or, work on the fabric, but indirectness, it's like having a shadow of something, you have to work on. That was very attractive to me, and that might relate remotely to the dimensional transformation of shibori, which I consider it very unique patterning technique. So that's how, and then I actually came to America after I finished my BFA, came right away and enrolled in the graduate school at University of Colorado in Boulder, where my first husband was studying architecture. And I was fortunate to have two really brilliant professors. And then I was really immersed in contemporary, really conceptual art, which was really exciting at that time in the late 60s and early 70s. So I learned a lot about more theoretical, conceptual aspects of art there. That was wonderful.
Well,
So,
as you're talking about that, I was curious, how how did your early training as a painter and some of the other things you do impact on when you got to the ikat or the shibori? How did the painting and your training as a painter impact that?
it's I notice myself, even it's not just like the shibari or kasuri or per se, but whenever I do any visual kind of, I have to deal with visual expression.
Mhm.
I'm very keenly aware of colors and shapes, and so that kind of paying attention to details and all the variety, shades, and nuances of things around us, which is very important for any kind of artist. And also, as a researcher of textile, it's very important because we don't, even an artist, we don't exist on just our own. All the things that happens around us and everything really, climate, earth, environment, and all the people I interacted and exhibition, whatever I saw, social, cultural changes that happened. So it was good to have that training of paying attention And there's this wonderful anthropologist, Tim Ingold. He has a lot of YouTube lectures, and one of which is Paying Attention. And it's about art and archaeology and anthropology and architecture and so forth. It's really wonderful to connect to that. And thank you for asking that question because I just thought of it right now. Connection.
You heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first.
All right.
Yoshiko, you are so well known for the the organizations that you've started. That's what you're well for. But you're also an artist, and I wanted to look at some of your work. I think my internet's kind of wonky, so I apologize ahead of time.
A little bit
Sorry. So this one is one of your pieces, and I was wondering because there's a whole story with it. There's a whole meaning to it. Would you talk about this?
Yes, this is one of the works that I have done with ikat, and then I was deeply involved, trained in a Japanese ikat. Mostly came mainly influenced by the Okinawan islands ikat tradition, and so that came up to like southern island of Kyushu and so forth. And Japanese started creating like a pictorial ikat. And this was considered one of the most difficult processes because it's so tedious. You know, you had to be so accurate in everything, tenacious. And when I was writing and of course, working with this technique in many ways, I wanted to make one day one piece artwork in this technique, which is called egasuri, picture ikat. And I thought it's on the weft. And actually, it's not so difficult per se. It just takes a lot of diligent and tenacious work and very accurate work, but I wanted to do it. But I didn't want to just do any kind of design and make a picture. It didn't mean much, you know, especially having the training of conceptual art. And one day I was driving freeway, and it was probably maybe Carter or cannot remember which president opened the country to China. It was called Red China at that time. And so the one of the like first like five commodities that went exported, like including Coca-Cola, you know, was went to China, and it was a big deal. And then I saw this big board, red and white Coca-Cola board, and I thought that would be a really appropriate and actually quite beautiful. So I wanted to do that. So I did that. And it was really, really time consuming. And I had to be until you get to the last point of weaving, which is like the short kind of a just almost like topping on a a cake. You don't know whether you did everything properly or not. So it's that kind of thing. And I finished it. And it belongs to it's in the permanent collection of the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco. And this also made into last minute the Dyer's Art, the book that was seminal book that was first published in 1973 by Jacqueline R. Lawson, Alfred Bueller, and so forth. And it was an important book because it had focused on the dyer's art, not constructed art like weaving, which is more European. Weaving or lace or embroidery, those are the main expressions techniques in European, because you know all our culture is quite Eurocentric for a long time. So this was a seminal publication to bring out all the other culture, it's just like the Orientalism written by Edward Said, which was a very important book. And it's very much like that in textile, this book, Dyer's Art was. And so that brought in so many different cultures and expressions. And I think convergence was like right on. Wanted to learn ikat, that's a new thing. And combined with the weaving, it was very early. So that's the story. And Jack Larson, when he came along for book signing, I went to see him and introduced me. It was a long time ago. I was very young and very kind of petite. And he was surprised. He said, "Oh, but you are so young." Because he thought someone who made this must be experienced ikat weaver, old lady. So that's an interesting story.
Well, I think it's interesting that you say it's not that difficult. I just am floored when I look at this work. It's amazing, amazing work that you've
Yes,
done. And I feel like you don't get enough credit for you as an artist because you do all these other
yes,
things. And we've got another piece of your work, and this one's called Mosquito Nitting.
yes.
And can you talk about this? Like, first of all, what was the idea behind it, and how did you make this?
Yes, this is another very basic, interesting Japanese ikat technique. And it's
Hmm.
actually Okinawan uses it a lot. And what it is a shifting technique. It's a weft shifting technique. And I introduced that in the 1973, that the book that I published. And before that, they weren't really introduced to the outside world in terms of a Eurocentric world. And this one, you have the skein of yarn that's long enough to weave a width of a cloth, and you mark and you resist the areas and dye it. So you have a dotted skein, and when you weave it, you have dots. But if you control these dots to line up every other one,
Mhm.
then you can move them because you have a little bit of give on the left side or right side. And you can make argyle pattern or basic net pattern. I really love this net pattern. And so I wanted to, mm, I made actually quite an impressive series called Time Series with this. And some of them I exhibited in a miniature exhibition in London and Smithsonian Institution. But that was a long time ago. But this piece was, I wanted to make actually mosquito net, which I used to sleep when I was very young in Japan, because of course we didn't have air conditioning. You probably didn't have air conditioning when you were young. Yes. So, and the mosquitoes are abundant, in Japan
Mm.
in the summer. So we sleep in mosquito net. So that was a big thrill for us to sleep during the summer under this, especially with my grandmother. And so I had this elusive net pattern by ikat, shifting technique, which created a sort of illusory netting pattern. And then it's actually a netting mosquito net I wove myself, and it was constructed like traditional mosquito netting. And my friend, who is a dancer and performer, she created this piece about Hiroshima and atomic bomb victims. And this was like her way of showing like this world and another world, two different life and death, life and death kind of thing. She incorporated and danced with it.
Mm.
That's the story.
Oh, that's an amazing piece. Well,
It's,
you wrote a
uh,
book. You wrote a book about Shibori because, from what I understand, your students were like, would you please write a book in English about shibori? And I was
Yeah,
curious when when you decided to focus in on this and learn more about it and pursue it, did you have to do a lot of research or a lot of study, or was it kind of common knowledge around you, either through the art school or your community?
no, actually, art school didn't teach any of this. Again, it's a
Huh.
kind of artisan dominant craft. And also the shibari tradition, each technique is uh, kind of separated in each craft group, artisan groups. So it was very difficult for one artist to become well known with all the techniques under control. Although there was one person, Katano Motohiko, who was one such person in the late 70s, 80s, fantastic, but not too many. So actually, how I started teaching shibori was that I had this book, a beautiful limited edition book with swatches, and I showed it to my colleague and good friend of mine who's a fantastic artist, Donna Larson. And we were teaching at the Fiberworks Center for the Textile Arts in Berkeley, California. That was established in 1971. So you have to remember, Kathy, you might have been too young, but we had to remember the 60s and 70s and 80s. We had a lot of this revolutionary thing going on. And we owe it to the youth of that period that we have so many more enlightened ways of looking at art and textiles and so forth. So um, there, Donna saw this book and said, teach me how to make this and how to make that and how do you do this. So I was translating and then we were trying out because I never learned directly from the artisans. So you see, so I had to learn myself. And then we put the class together and actually Annalisa Hedstrom was in our first class in 1975, and she has been incredible. It changed her life. She's a brilliant, brilliant artist, and there are quite a few more artists came out of this mastering this interesting dimensional transformation. I called it shaped and resisted because that's a different way of making patterns. So that's how I had to write. They wanted me to write a book about it, but I didn't know much. So I had to um, write a grant application for Japan Foundation, and I had to apply for it. And I was able to get that, which was a very competitive, prestigious um, grant. And it enabled me to do the research. And I had two former students, Mary Kellogg Rice, who drew a beautiful drawing of processes, and Jane Barton, and we have co-published a book, co-authored the book. That's how it started.
Yeah, I don't know if many people know how groundbreaking your work was. I mean, you really brought a lot of these techniques into the American culture, the American art community. And I mean, you were the person people went to find out how this needs to be done, and also the history of it. I think that was important too. That it wasn't just artwork; it was also cultural. And so,
Absolutely
thank you.
right,
We thank you
Kathy.
for that.
Yeah, that's really great. And also, Convergence embraced that. They were always open to authentic, very esoteric sometimes traditions. bring in
Mhm.
and make it available to public. So that's
Well, I
good.
think there's something magical about those art techniques like Shibori and Ikat, is that you you know what you're doing and you know what you want it to look like, but when you're done, it's kind of like, oh, look what I made. At least
Yeah.
that's been my experience. It's really kind of magical, kind of like indigo is magic. So I always think it's interesting that a lot of indigo is done with Shibori and
Yes,
Ikat.
but Kathy, what you are is like you are open to surprise. And Michel Garcia, who is an incredible
Oh,
phytochemist, and also botanist and historian, and he's a genius. And he said, "Be curious and be patient." Always that. But you are open-minded, and you let the materials transform through those processes, and that surprise is a part of the creative process. And you can't have like fixed mind, it has to look like this, or I wanted to make this. That's not so good. So that is a good attitude, Kathy.
that's true. If you're going to be said, and I only want this, you're going to be disappointed. Well, the other thing I want to talk about is your new direction, which is it Boro? Am I pronouncing that? It's Boro,
Yeah,
right?
yes,
Okay. Now it means like tattered rags,
yeah,
which I think is so interesting that um, something that is people were making things out of these leftover scraps and cloth because they had to, right? They couldn't afford to go out and just buy something new. So it had such humble beginnings, and now, I mean, it's almost revered. People are studying it and honoring it. So how did you get on that path to Borro? And first of all, would you explain a little bit what Borro is?
well, actually it's just a colloquial expression in Japan. And
Uh-huh.
so it has taken two meanings within original context in Japan. Borrow means anything that's broken or tattered or mended or cast offs. So like you would say, oh yes, you can come over and stay, but it's such a boroya. My house is really like, or you can ride in my boroguruma, like my ragged car. So being humble and that kind of thing, everything that's so textiles, because it's the life of textile, right? It takes on all the impressions and memories of life people goes through with the textile, especially things that's utilitarian, clothing or bedding and work, protection on this and that. So what happens is that naturally it wears out easily, and they have to keep
Mhm.
mending and patching. And in olden days, people didn't throw away much, especially in the colder regions where cotton didn't grow. So a lot of recycled, used cotton came in. So when they start making things, it was already weak, and patched pieces also were kind of weak. And so, you have to keep layering, patching, piecing, stitching. And so that kind of layered, it's almost like if you look at the substrate of this textile that you consider rags, it's almost like it it's a memory and a record of what happened with a person. So the textile lived with the person who used it, and it is
Mhm.
the life is in one, embedded in this textile. So outside of original context, especially in the West, or in like now in China and Australia, this exhibition has gone to, where the consumption is the culture is more consumption driven. so to speak, technology and consumerism, everything is available. So there, people are not used to looking at things like that or cannot imagine actually people lived like that not too long ago, maybe 50 years, 100 years ago. So when they see it, it's a very kind of a shock to realize, and then it has the kind of emotive power to move the person who looks at it. There's this kind of almost primeval sort of power, that beautiful, pristine textiles don't have. So
Mm.
that is, I think, very much a kind of opening pathways to the people, I call them in the academic writing, interlocutors of Borro, however they deal with it, whether they wanted to collect and then hang it on the wall or, whatever, or they wanted to just turn it into a fashion or however they want to deal with it. But whenever they see it, they have their own, each person has this kind of inner sort of, you know, emotional reaction to it. And I
Mm.
think that makes people aware of things, the times when we have such limited resources. That was not just Japan, all over the world, and
Mhm.
still worldwide, people live like that. So it's not, should not be enshrined like Japanese aesthetics and things like that. That I don't agree with. Is that clear? Is that sort of explained?
Mhm.
Yeah, and then when I teach workshops, I was about to borrow, and then
Uh-huh.
sometimes students or lecture, someone would ask me, Yoshiko, do you make a borrow? And then I'm just taken aback. I said, you cannot make a borrow. It just borrow happens. It's a state of being. And so you can be inspired to mimic the process, which I think is a really interesting exercise. So in my workshop, I'll ask everyone to bring or worn out or cast offs or, stained things or something that deceased person left or, that you cannot throw away. And then in one workshop, one woman who recently lost her husband remade her husband's jacket into something incredibly beautiful for herself with that thinking. So it's more like a transformative um, thinking, I think, that
Mhm.
we need to think about the power of this kind of use and rags and things that we think that are not important. We don't have to always make perfect things or new things, throw away to get something. When something broken you throw away, no, you should you should see the life of the object. You can't do
Well,
that.
I'm learning so much about this that this question may be really stupid now, but it seemed like whenever I saw images of that was considered Boro, it was in Indigo. Is that the norm, or was that just coincidence?
Well, these are the things that are indigo. Oh,
Wrong
indigo.
shock. Sorry.
That's okay.
Keep going.
That's a very important thing because again, you have to think about what people had and the dye that was available, easily available, was indigo because they didn't have chemical dyes, right? And also
Right.
natural dyes, other colors, most of them beautiful colors, needs moderns, and they are expensive dyes. So ordinary people had tannin or indigo, blue or brown or white, off white. and or brown cotton if they were lucky. And then so that's why a lot of things were dyed in indigo, because when it gets dirty, or sometimes if they can afford to dye it first and wear it. But a lot of places I read that they didn't even have time to dye it in indigo to begin with, you know. But one thing I must remind you is the stitchery was very important. Because imagine, Kathy, if you don't have threaded needle, you couldn't make a Borro. You couldn't repair anything, or you couldn't make any garments or bedding or anything. And
Mhm.
so I know that a shuttle, spindle, and dipod, but there should be, of course, there's a whole embroiderers guild, and which is very strong in England. You know, queens do the embroidery, but stitching, threaded needle, I found in research that there was 50,000-year-old Denisovan, not even Neanderthal, much older, Denisovan cave in Altai Mountain in Siberia. Russian archaeologists found this needle, perfect shaped needle like ours, but made of big, like Jurassic or something, a bird bone. And you know, that tells something incredible, which
Mhm.
is to have such a small needle hole. Um, the shuttle spindle, that's the spindle part, the thread has to be made, right?
Right.
And if even hide and box, you want to start stitching. So they had it. And it's a one, I think I would say it's the beginning of human technology, is that needle and knowing how to thread the fiber. So that goes back to how important Handweavers Guild of America is, because we talk about fiber. You know, we are really fiber heads, and I really believe in it strongly. So
Well, I
that,
think it's interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, no.
I
Yeah.
just think it's interesting how popular right now classes are on stitching, and not just mend it to fix the hole, but you make the hole part of the whole piece. We've got several classes here this week at
What
Convergence on that. It really is a shift in thinking, isn't it?
That is wonderful, and I need to have your program, because it can be part of my PhD research. And you know, I'm documenting this what's happening in the world. We're changing in different
Mhm.
many ways, and so what happened in my research? It took, you know, it's like 5-year program, and I started during pandemic started. I couldn't go anywhere, so I decided to take the journey of the mind, and I love it. It's been such wonderful adventures. But there, I realized in the end, right now, what I have to really think about is value, how we construct value. So that is a meaning making process. And that's whenever human interact with a thing or a thing around you, there's the intersection of academically what's called object worlds and life worlds. And there is this meaning. And we just figure out, why am I doing, what's happening, you know, what I feel. This is eventually the value you realize what's important to you. So that's in the essence what I'm going to have to write about. So that's an exciting thing. And
Well, I look forward to it. We all
yeah,
want to see this when it's done. We can't wait. We want to hear
well,
about this.
actually, University of Lincoln in Nebraska has the International Quilt Study Center and a museum. That's
Uh-huh.
the only kind. It's fantastic institution. And Dr. Marie Hansen asked me to do an exhibition of Borro in 2026. It's already
Oh,
slated.
wonderful.
So I'm hoping some of my PhD dissertation would make into some publication to share with people because I learned a lot. It's a learning process, never stopping and exciting. And I'm sure you agree, Kathy. And
Oh,
what
yeah, yeah, yeah.
GA does is that, is sharing knowledge. And so coming to the end, which is like, what's next, right? And
Mhm.
the World Shibori Network Foundation became nonprofit finally because I have been self-funding. It's been very difficult. And so we are organizing the 12th International Shibori Symposium. And it's just Shibori is a keyword. It's not just to bring in people because it's the resisting and transformation of dimensions. And this time it's Shibori and architecture. And I wanted to show, Elizabeth can show next to frame, if she can, the picture of the um, museum in Basel. She flashed it. Yeah, hi. Please show that. Yes, this is the River Rhine, Rhine River, and this is Basel, and this is very beautiful old part of town right by the river, and you can see this modern building. It's a part of the it's the exhibition part of this big museum called Museum der Kulturen Basel and MKB, which means now it's called Museum of World Culture. But it used to be like Dr. Alfred Buehler was a director for a long time. He was part of the author of the Dyer's Art and Dr. Spicer and a lot of fantastic anthropologists had studied and collected incredible textiles from different parts of the world. They have 340,000 objects. And so it was like kind of for us in the 70s who studies like ikat weaving, like Lydia Van Gelder had met actually with Dr. Buehler. She was in my ikat workshop also in San Francisco. And she wrote the first ikat weaving book in America, major one. I did the first instruction in English. But so there, we're going to hold the conference symposium in September 2026. And this museum, the roof is like origami, folded. It's almost like Itajime Shibori. So the architecture I consider as also a dimensional transformation all the way from one line drawing, one dimension, two dimension, these walls and ceilings, and third dimension, which is the spatial design in the center, and fifth dimension, which is what it articulates around it and the community. And so this was designed by Herzog and de Meuron, architects, which are world famous architects. And they are based in Basel. And we'll have architecture and shibori together. And we're going to feature very interesting, this time more object-based and interaction with some inquiries and experimentation and artistry exhibition and so forth. So we're very excited about that. But it's 2 years from now, over 2 years, but we are already planning, working for it.
That sounds amazing. It just sounds amazing. It's on my bucket list. I want to go.
Please go. It's really
All right.
mind changing, life changing. Yes.
Well, I'm looking at these questions, and most of them are just people saying, thank you for what you do. We admire you. We love what you do. So I was curious, so many people look up to you. I mean, I always have. And I was curious, who do you look up to? Who's been your inspiration?
Well, my mentor was Jacqueline Larson,
Okay.
and he was an exceptional person, and he was a weaver, you know, and he was a real well-trained, amazing weaver. And then he said, one point, people ask, how you become like so wealthy, being like weaver. And he said, well, follow your passion. Like that's what he said. But he was always interested in fine arts and craft art and the technology, materials, and cultures. So I think that, as I said, this life worlds and object worlds we were talking about, we are not alone. We didn't make this ourselves to the point where we are alone. It it had lot of influences that we don't recognize, and to embrace that we're part of this big world. And I think
Mhm.
that is lacking in a lot of politicians. And, just in front of them, there's just greed. But if you look at how people lived in that way for centuries and centuries, they knew that they have to live harmoniously, otherwise you can't really survive. There's that, I can't remember the microorganism, woman scientist, I forgot her name, but she is anti-Darwin. um, she's saying that not the power and and the species that's strong and that affects the evolution of species. She was able to show that no, in these bacteria or whatever, they were really negotiating and not the trying to overpower and fight, but they're trying to negotiate and harmoniously live. And by that, they can grow and they can evolve. And I think we need
Hmm.
to question the word progress and evolution because they're not the same thing. And we think we're progressing, but we're not. We have to evolve into something else and in the right way. We have to
Right.
question that. Yeah. Anyways,
Well, let me
um,
ask you something. I know I'm just singing your praises, but I admire what you've accomplished and that you're going to keep going. You're going to do more. But I was curious because you've started organizations, all the artwork that you've done, the publications that you've done. What would you like to be best known for? What are you the most proud of?
I think Jack said in my forward for the Memory on Cloth, that's a book about Shibori now, he said I was a conduit between East
Oh,
and West. And I think that is probably East, it's this kind of duality, binary thing you have to think about because East and West, and also not just that craft and art, material and process and craft and industry. They're always this kind of it's kind of binary, uh, a bit of dialectic discussion, but even when we're talking about Borro, if you are going to say it's beautiful, then what is ugly? You have to,
oh,
if it's hot, it's cold, right? If it's good, you have to say bad. And Yanagi, Soetsu Yanagi, who started sort of the kind of a movement, Minge, the folk craft movement in Japan. And toward the end of his life, he was deeply became religious, Buddhism and philosophical. And he said the beauty in the Minge, which was considered not worth of putting it on wall or considering it beautiful or anything like that before. I mean, this is a new idea for Japanese, and we have to remember that. And we're learning as well. And that was the kind of beauty, he said, that exists before beauty and ugliness even separated. And he's very against putting things in this opposition. And so when you say something is good, then there has to be some definition of bad, right? Beautiful, then there has to be ugly. Is that where you want to be, or is that how it should be embraced? You have to ask that. And I think that's a very interesting idea. And at this point, in such a binary, such divisive, society we live, and especially in America, we have this progress and power, this showing of wealth and object is something that gives you more status or more power, more whatever. So, but it's difficult. And I've been living in England. It's a small, not small, so small, but University of Leicester, which has a very famous museum studies school, which is like third ranking last year in whole England. And then they have very interesting approach, interdisciplinary anthropology, museology, cultural study, material culture. And my professor started this displacement anthropology because museum is full of displaced objects if you think about it. And then people are constantly displaced, right? So what does that mean? And so there are a lot of different nuances and subtleties and elements we have to take in. And I think
Well, I'll tell you,
is the most
hearing what you're saying is going to make me. I mean, I'm coming up on a week of being able to look at exhibits. And I don't know about you all, but I think I'm going to look at those exhibits a little bit differently now. Hearing some of the things that you're saying about, you know, the good and the bad and the ugly and the pretty and that kind of thing. So I appreciate that. That's that's good food for thought. Very good food for thought.
it's
And
so
I
nice.
hate to say this, but we have to stop. We need to have like a 2 or 3 hour sessions, just talking more.
Yes, but please could support World Shibori Network Foundation. The website is just www.shibori.org. And we have a pre-registration already open for just to show
Really?
interest, not to register anything, so that we can, because we have only 240 capacity, because we don't
Ooh.
we have the auditorium big enough for that. And so we are registering first to come first. People who pre-register would have priority in more than 2 years from now, but we're all looking forward to making it very special. And I really appreciate what you do, Kathy, with
Oh,
Handweavers Guild of America. It's a very important organization.
well,
And
we're
all,
excited. We're excited to have Convergence this week, and it's kind of, I think it's perfect that you kind of kick off the week. It's a
oh,
perfect way to start the week.
I hope you have a successful convergence. It's wonderful to get together. Its camaraderie is important. We
Mhm.
can't be,
It is.
we can't live alone. We need to have
No.
connection. We need to support each other and be critical also. All right.
Well, thank you so much for being on here. And I do encourage you all to check out the World Shibori. It's amazing stuff, and you'll see more about that as we go. Again, thank you so much, Yoshiko Wada. It was an honor to have you here today. We've been talking about having you on forever. So thank you and I know you are so busy, and we do appreciate you taking time
Well,
for being here today.
Kathy, you are fantastic. You are dynamite, and I can see how HGA is full of these wonderful, powerful women. I'm so happy to see you succeed.
You're going to learn more, and there's links there to World Shibori Network, right?
Yes,
From your website?
yes,
Uh-oh.
please.
Kathy, I'm stopping your video
All
because
right,
you're
my
starting to cut
internet
up.
keeps going in. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. All right.
Great. Shall I get off, or is there any questions or what? I'm happy
We
to.
are out of time. We're not going to be able to do questions.
Oh, okay.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
You're
Thank you so much
welcome.
for being on today. We want to
Thank you,
thank
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We want to thank our sponsor today, which was Kathy Weber. Kathy, I hope you are excited about your sponsorship today. She was wonderful, and we do appreciate you sponsoring Textiles and Tea. If you or your guild, your business, your buddies want to get together and sponsor an episode, you can. You can go to the website at weavespindye.org, and you can sponsor. You can check out there and just go ahead and purchase it, or call me and we'll help you set it up. So thank you, Kathy. We appreciate it. We have some things coming up that we want to talk about. We're at Convergence. Woohoo! And you know what? There's still classes available. So if you're thinking about you want to add something, or if you're in the area and you want to come in and take a class, we still have some seminars and super seminars available. And please come shop. See the exhibits. After hearing Yoshiko talking about how you view art and crafts, you got to come see the exhibits now and kind of view it a little bit differently. All of that is available. What's new is that we've added another tour. And we saw this when we came and checked out this facility over a year ago. And they're going to give you a behind the scene tours of the theater. They have an incredible theater here. And they're going to, we love that. We love seeing everything behind the scenes, where they do the scenery, where they have the costumes and how everything works. It's an amazing theater that they have here. So that's going to be Monday night if you want to sign up for it. And again, you can do that through weavespindye.org, and I believe there'll be information about it really soon on the Convergence app. We're going to get that up probably either today or tomorrow. So if you haven't had a chance to ever see it back behind the theaters, come check this out. It's going to be great. We want to remind you of Spinning and Weaving Week. It's hard to believe. We're working hard on it right now, October the 6th through the 12th. We have all kinds of things that are available. If you would like to get the word out about your business, become a sponsor. Or if you want to make sure that programs like this continue, become a sponsor. Love to have you do that. There's advertising opportunities. There's thread talks, marketplace live. You can show off your products that you sell. And we have a fashion show. And then there's all kinds of sessions. You get to see the artist studios. That's probably one of my favorites. I love seeing behind the scenes where people create. All of this is part of Spinning and Weaving Week. And we encourage you to come and take a look at it. We're putting up stuff as we go on weavespindye.org. And it is recorded, so you can watch it. I think it's like 90 days after it happens, you can watch it. So even if you sign up for things and you think, I'm not going to be able to see it live, you can watch it later. So keep that in mind. It's on the website. You can learn more there. We want to thank people for their generous donations to HGA. Those donations help things happen like this. so that you could see Yoshiko Wada and hear her talk, whether it's careers in textiles, textiles and tea, spinning and weaving week. All of those are possible through the generous donations of our members and people who want to donate to the Fiber Trust. So thank you all so much. You can do that on weavespindye.org. I usually say, I hope you have a great week. You will. If you are here, you're going to have a great week. If you're thinking about coming, come on down. We are so excited this week. And we will see you next Tuesday also. Everybody, part of the staff will still be at Convergence next Tuesday. And we're going to have Marlo Catoni is going to be on and talk about his work. So thank you all so much. If you see me, say hi. I want to hear from you all. Thank you guys so much and have a great week. Happy tea.